Hurricane Fiona, with top winds of 80 miles an hour, making its way toward landfall somewhere in the western half of Puerto Rico. We'll have the latest on all the watches and warnings and a look at our weather for the week ahead and what the impact is with all these with Fiona and a couple of typhoons in the Pacific, the big storm that they had up in Alaska. All will wreak some havoc in the long range, and some of it in a good way, by the way. Right here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. In southwest Suffolk County, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, tri-state area with everything you need to make sure your home looks good, works right, and is protected just in case we do have a tropical storm or hurricane one day. It's not going to be Fiona. Generators, sump pumps, batteries, flashlights, and of course you can make your yard look good this fall with a new round of mulch or topsoil or whatever the color you like. 631-756-1125 is the wonderful telephone number, and the website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
And just a second, Joe. I'm going to shrink myself here a little bit. And then I'm going to find you somewhere.
Here I am.
There you go.
Yeah, there I am.
Yes. Okay. Let me square myself up a little bit here so that we're on the same plane. Okay. So Fiona's kind of behaving pretty much as advertised here so far. Just got upgraded to hurricane here on the 11 o'clock advisory, 17.3 north, 66.5 west, 50 miles south of Ponce, Puerto Rico. Top winds 80 miles an hour and moving west-northwest at 8, and the pressure down to 987 millibars. Pressure's dropped quite a bit since the overnight. Looks like this could maybe get to a Cat 2 before it makes landfall. Certainly is a Cat 1 now.
Well, it's no question that at least in terms of the intensity forecasts, they're pretty much right on target. Late yesterday, I had a chance to post something on my Facebook pages about this and commented that during the first half of this week, the storm, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Fiona is going to rev up. And this, as you just said, it may even be quicker than this, but certainly up to a Category 2 status. And I think the peak of the storm is likely to happen either late Thursday, early Friday of this upcoming week, when it'll be probably within about 680 miles southeast of the New York City metropolitan area, thankfully. But by that time, the storm may very well be a Cat 3 with winds anywhere from 111 to 130 miles per hour. And while it will not hit us directly, Joe, with those kind of winds, the ocean waters likely are going to be exceedingly agitated, so much so that along the New Jersey coastline and along the south coast of Long Island, there are going to be rough seas, significant swells, rip currents. So if in your mind you have the idea, hey, maybe next weekend we'll go to the beach and maybe next weekend we'll step out into the water, don't do that, because you are asking for trouble. This storm system, again, not hitting us directly, but indirectly, will cause lots of problems along much of the Atlantic seaboard by churning up the waves and causing, again, rip currents and all sorts of mayhem. But it looks like it's going to be a pretty good storm, probably the most potent that we have seen so far in this relatively quiet hurricane season.
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning. The fact that we are now at September 18th, and we are only at the F storm here on the Atlantic side. We're going to absolutely, if the average number, which is 14, and we are at 6, which means 8 more storms in the next 6 weeks. Certainly not impossible, by the way. For it to happen, but you got to take into account the pace of the season so far has not been overly bullish, and in terms of development and the number of storms, you got to wonder whether we're going to get to normal as far as total storm production for this season.
Well, I mean, we saw that Earl almost, not quite, but almost made it up to a Cat 3. This storm certainly looks like it will be a Cat 3 in the next few days. So it would appear that, yeah, what we're missing out in quantity, we're not missing out in quality. In other words, whatever storms that have formed or maybe will form in the Atlantic for the balance of the season may very well become rather significant, if not major, hurricanes. There's these storms, hurricanes. The main reason for their development is to help to expend all of the surplus heat that is built up in the tropics during the summertime. And so if we don't have all that many hurricanes this season from now through, let's say, the end of October, early November, what few that we do see certainly will grab on to all of that latent heat, so to speak, and turn into major storms. I mean, we're not seeing any, little, this system, only got up to about 35 or 40 miles an hour before it faded out or whatever. No, this storm, Fiona, will be a major hurricane certainly in the next few days. And who's to say that others behind it, what few there may be, will also turn into major systems, and that loans itself to, you're thinking, well, if we do have a few more major storms, what track may they take relative to the eastern seaboard? And so we have to be on guard, even though we haven't had too many this season. You only need one, Joe. You only need one.
Right. The loop's been running while you were speaking, Joe, and a couple of things that I'm noticing. One is a real expansion of convection. I mean, a real just huge blow up of convection this morning near where the center is. It's completely tucked in underneath this large blob of white that you're seeing developing on the loop. Also, note to the northwest and north, and also around on the east side on the edges. We refer to this as feathering, where you see the outflow and the feathering of high cirrus clouds getting blown away up to the north and northeast. That is usually a sign of a storm that's undergoing intensification. And again, judging as I mentioned earlier about the fact that we've seen a very large fall in pressure from overnight when we were, in the somewhere in the high 990s, and now we've dropped it down to almost the mid 980s, and I think this strengthening may not be done. The other thing is I've got the observations from Puerto Rico. By the way, Joe Rayo's monitoring the chat board, so if you have any questions or comments or concerns, by all means, share them. One of the things that's happening with this is the fact that even though the center is as far south as it is, they're getting some pretty hefty winds across Puerto Rico, particularly over parts of the northern shore, on the Atlantic shoreline, seeing some gusts to 45 at Las Casas Lake at Fort Buchanan. That's an interesting combination of names, gusting to 45 in the last hour. San Juan International Airport has just some light rain, but their east wind at 29, gusting to 44, and even out in parts of the Virgin Islands to the east, still getting tropical storm force winds and gusts up into the high 40s. Charlotte Amale is reporting an east wind at 24. They've got a gust there of 48, and at the buoy, which sits, I'm not sure which island that sits south of, if that's St. Thomas or St. John, is east at 40 miles an hour. And this is the east side is the eastern quadrant is the most active quadrant with this. And even though the center may go across the western part of Puerto Rico, or even if the center were to miss it and head into the Mona Passage, Puerto Rico is going to be getting rocked for quite a while here.
Yes, no question about that. And the fact that Puerto Rico is a commonwealth of the United States makes it almost as important, if not as important, as if one of the United States were being hit directly by a tropical system. The other night, I was watching Channel 2 news and noticing that Lonnie Quinn had spent a long time in talking, doing a discussion about the hurricane's effects, potential effects on Puerto Rico. And it's important because a lot of people in the New York City tri-state area have friends and relatives who live in Puerto Rico, and so it's important to them. I remember, Joe, when I was doing 1010 Winds radio, this goes back now to the let's say 1994, 1995 period. And I used to do the 1010 Winds from my home. I was living in Levittown at the time, and upstairs from my master bedroom was where I had my quote studio, where I was doing the reports for WINS. And this was during when we had, I believe it was Hurricane Luis, which was bearing down on Puerto Rico. And to show you the importance of the news media and how they believe that they needed the very latest updates on anything that might affect Puerto Rico, 2 o'clock in the morning, my phone starts to ring. And I wake up and I say, what the heck is this all about? And who was it? It was 1010 Winds saying I had to go on immediately at 2 a.m. with the latest National Hurricane Center report on Luis, which was heading on a path that they actually then put up hurricane warnings for Puerto Rico. And they couldn't wait until like a few hours later at 5 a.m. They had to have it right then and there. Now, this is affecting Puerto Rico. Now. And so it had nothing to do with the New York area or nothing with the United States, but because of the fact that Puerto Rico, again, is a commonwealth, and again, so many people in this area have an interest in Puerto Rico, it went all the way to the top of the list in terms of weather, and that's probably what's happening right now, because the darn thing, Fiona, is literally almost sitting on top of Puerto Rico. And as you just said, very strong winds, heavy rains. So we have our fingers crossed that Puerto Rico will make it through this storm as opposed to others that they've had over recent years.
I don't want to leave out the east coast of the Dominican Republic here, and I've got the radar up overlaid on the observations, and it's actually the middle and eastern part of Puerto Rico getting pounded by some very heavy rains, and also back out over the Virgin Islands, seeing bands of heavy rain. Still seeing some rains out in the northern leewards. There's not a whole lot going on yet to the west, and once you get into the Mona Passage, there's some weaker bands that are beginning to approach the south coast of the Dominican Republic. There's not a whole lot of observations here to speak of. There's just one near the coast, and they are reporting a northeast wind at 12 miles an hour. So there's nothing special here yet. But eventually, depending on the track, the eastern coast of the Dominican Republic could certainly have some issues, and there are some various warnings up. I'm just going to really quick. Let me just really quick go back to the advisory. By the way, Joe, can you see if you can on the UCAR if they have a radar for Puerto Rico, a better radar shot?
I will check, and while I'm doing that, let me point out that the chairman, Mr. Briller, has hit Super Chat today, and he also mentions that he plans to go surfing in Wildwood on Friday. Good luck, Scott. We want to still hear from you after Friday,
yes,
if that be the case.
Exactly. All right, I know I'm on there full screen because I don't have any maps up yet. I have to do that so that I can at least bring up the advisory and not have it there on the shot. So just to go over this, we've got warnings for Puerto Rico, which include Vieques and Culebra.
Yes, I do. I do have. If you give me sharing capabilities, Joe, I do. Oh, this is a great shot.
Okay.
The radar from San Juan.
All right, let me do that. Hang on one second. Go ahead. You should be able to share. I will set up the screen here so that you can do that. And while you're doing that, let me just finish this advisory, and then you can go ahead and describe. Yeah, that is pretty impressive on the radar. Give me 1 second here. So just want to go over. Hurricane watches are up for the north coast of the Dominican Republic from Cabo Francis Vallejo westward to Puerto Plata. Tropical storm warnings are still up for the U.S. Virgin Islands, British Virgin Islands, the north coast of the Dominican Republic from Cabo Francis Vallejo westward to Puerto Plata. Okay, so they've got both tropical storm warnings and a hurricane watch up for those areas. And for the south coast of the Dominican Republic, we have a tropical storm watch from west of Cabo Caucedo to Sarahona. Also up, we have tropical storm watches up for the Turks and Caicos Islands, that I know how to pronounce, southeastern Bahamas, including Atkins, Crooked Island, Long Cay, the Inaguas, Managua, and the Ragged Islands. So that covers all the watches and warnings. So go ahead, yeah, Jojo, talk the radar.
Well, obviously, in the very first few frames, you can see the eye of the storm. The eye of the storm is passing to the south of Puerto Rico, and you can see the cursor here. I'm wiggling a little bit. That's pretty much where the radar is located, San Juan, Puerto Rico. And you can see that this is a 3-hour loop. And over a span of the last 3 hours, how the rains have just literally spread rapidly across the entire island. The loop begins with western sections of Puerto Rico still pretty much out in the clear, but that is not the case by the middle and latter part of the loop, which again is a 3-hour loop. And notice also all the areas of orange and yellow, those are the moderate to heavy bands of rain. And you can see that San Juan certainly has been in line with those, and other areas right along the immediate south coast of Puerto Rico getting hit fairly hard as well. And the storm taking a track. Now, if memory serves me correct, Joe, the original track, or the storm track from last evening, the 5 o'clock p.m. Saturday storm track, had Fiona moving almost directly straight over Puerto Rico. But it appears that obviously from this radar loop that the eye of the storm is obviously a bit more to the south of the storm. Now, whether or not that's going to have any significant say in what or where Fiona goes in future hours and future days, that's yet to be seen. But nonetheless, Puerto Rico was told over the last couple of days to batten down because Sunday would be the day when they would feel the full effects of Fiona. And as you can see quite plainly on the radar, they're feeling it right now.
Well, certainly a few extra ticks to the west would make a big difference for the east coast of the Dominican Republic and for the southeastern Bahamas. So and it's also in the longer term, Joe. It's not going to have any major change with regards to the weather in the U.S. and the Mid-Atlantic or up into New England. But Bermuda, for example, a few extra ticks to the west could make a big difference. Having a major hurricane that's probably going to pass relatively close to Bermuda, although most of the forecast tracks right now of the center at least are to the left of the island or to the west. And it also in the long term might have an impact for Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. So that's something to pay attention to. Also, by the way, just a real quick mention, and we'll get into this when we get done with the tropical system, is the fact that between this tropical system, the typhoons in the Pacific, the major storm that hit Alaska, all of this is creating a situation where we are going to see, and I don't know how good your memory is, Joe. I can't remember. It's been the last many years we've seen not some years more than others, but there's been this general extension of summer patterns to go well through the month of September. And in last year, we kind of had it even into the first part of October before the switch finally flipped. We're actually going to see autumn arrive at the end of this week with a really cool looking, when I say cool, I don't mean, it's, cool.
Yeah.
But a cool, chilly-ish weather pattern for much of the east, the northeast, and the mid-Atlantic, and maybe even getting down into the southeast. Autumn's coming. We're actually going to have autumn weather at the beginning of autumn, which, like I said, I can't remember the last time we were in a pattern like this going into the end of September.
Yeah, a lot of people have complained over recent years that the calendar says autumn, but it never seems to really get coolish until we get to the end of October or November. But no, this is going to be a most definite cool airflow for Friday. I'm looking at the 500 map for the GFS for Friday morning of next week, and the flow, Joe, comes all the way from north of Hudson Bay straight south right into the New York City metropolitan area. So it is going to be a very dramatic, a very dynamic change to much, much cooler weather as we get into the very beginning of autumn, which, as you pointed out, will arrive here on Thursday. First full day of autumn will be on Friday.
All right, we're going to come back to that because it's all, obviously it's important in terms of the longer range outlook. So let's go back to the Hurricane Center's forecast here. Let me get myself out of the way, and we are again the 11 o'clock advisory: 17.3, 66.5 west, top winds 80 miles an hour, west northwest motion. You see the forecast track here going over the eastern part of Puerto Rico, kind of touching, the western part of Puerto Rico, touching the eastern part of the Dominican Republic. We've got a track that just kind of skims the eastern Bahamas, and for the first time, the Hurricane Center as this Fiona by Tuesday or early Wednesday approaches 25 degrees north. They have it designated as a major hurricane, and then taking a turn to the northeast and then northeast, and passing relatively close to just to the northwest of the island of Bermuda. Here's the reconnaissance aircraft is there right now, so we could take a look at what they're finding. And you've got three fixes here. Now, sometimes when you see these zigzags, you got to remember that when you're looking here in the latitude, longitude, they're pretty close together. So oftentimes the best thing to do is you wait for all the fixes, and then you just sort of average the motion. Drawing a line, say, from where the 993 pressure is to where the 988 pressure is, which is the most recent fix. So we've basically had a 5 millibar drop in the last couple of hours. The movement looks to be maybe we'll have to wait to see where there's another fix. But between the first and the third fix, the movement is looks like it's a little more northwest now than west northwest, which would kind of match up with what you expect in the forecast. And then also looking at the wind barbs here, we've got a lot of these purple wind barbs north and east of the center. This is why Puerto Rico is getting it dealing with gales here, eventually almost island wide because of the track. You've got a lot of these really strong winds at flight level here. The purple is 64 to 83 knots, and there's quite a few of those north and east of the center. And to the west, the winds drop off down to about gale force. And again, this is at flight level, so when you look, you cut them down by about 10 to 15% at least with regards to what they experience down at the surface. The forecast model guidance, all of them have this as a hurricane, which is like a big duh. But the vast majority of models now are actually making this a Category 3 hurricane within about 48 to 60 hours. So by this time Tuesday, by the measure of a number of these models, we have them as a Cat 2. We actually have two of them that bring this up. I'm sorry, it is Cat 3, and we actually have two of these as a Cat 4. Now, the model forecast guidance is clustered together fairly well, brings it Bermuda. If you look on the easternmost track of the model guidance is kind of just northwest of the island. So the vast majority of these tracks are north and west of the island, but they're close, obviously, probably within less than 100 miles, and some of them within less than 50 miles. But they're all pretty constant. There's a couple of outliers, but there's one particular outlier, Joe, that takes it out to just east of 70 west when it's up at 35. There's only, being that there's only one, we don't really attach, and we attach very little importance to it. But that would be, if you wind up seeing something shift a little bit, maybe you'll take maybe the tracks are a little bit more to the northwest. That one certainly an outlier, and we're starting to see also the maps being expanded out so that you can see it sort of, it misses Nova Scotia, but it does take it up into Newfoundland. And the thing is, Fiona's going to get wrapped up in that deep trough. It's only going to energize it. The deep trough in southeastern Canada, which adds
Right.
adds. Well, I guess saying adding fuel to the fire is not the right cliche, but it does reinforce the colder flow in the eastern part of the United States.
Yeah, that's going to play the role, the combination of what is going to be already a very sharp upper level short wave in the atmosphere now merging with a rather potent tropical system. And that's only going to sharpen the trough even more so. And as I said, by Friday morning, Joe, the air coming into New York City, the tri-state area, is going to be almost straight due north. And we talk about this in the wintertime. We say the coldest weather that we see in the winter, the coldest temperatures that we ever see, is on a straight northerly flow. Well, I'm happy that it's not January or February, but it'll be interesting to see whether or not we approach any record low temperatures either Friday or Saturday, because that airflow, again, is going to be coming almost straight due north or north-northwest and bringing or pulling down some of the really cold stuff that's up over the northern regions of Canada for the end of the week and into the weekend.
Might we even see? You know what? I'm going to pull it up now. Maybe the first snowflakes up in northern New England.
And these people, they were talking about how hot it was for a long period of time, how hot and dry, especially August was, and it's never going to get cold here. Oh, we're going to have to wait until November or December before we see any semblance of cool air. And now look at this. I mean, the weather sometimes can turn on a dime, and it is certainly going to turn real fast when we get to the end of the week. And people are going to be saying like, "Oh, what happened?" It's going to be like taking a cold shower, a cold slap in the face when we get to the end of the week.
Those are the same people that were sharing with us by using their really extensive monosyllabic I'm having trouble talking this morning. I should talk here myself. Monosyllables. How's that? Four-letter words about the summer never coming because we had those cool blasts of air in June. I pulled up the snowfall forecast map here, Joe, through next Saturday evening, and there are a couple of little dots of blue in northern Vermont and northern New Hampshire and parts, right along the Maine Canadian border. Nothing to write home about, obviously, but who knows? Somebody up there on some mountain might see their first flakes.
I noticed they have measurable snow on this map that you have up right now. Measurable snow along the shoreline of the Gaspé Peninsula. Now, I have been to the Gaspé Peninsula. I was there 50 years ago to view a total eclipse of the sun right along the St. Lawrence Seaway. And there's a little town there called Cap Chat. And it's astonishing to me to see that there's the possibility that there may be snow all the way up there. By the way, that's a leisurely 900-mile drive from the Bronx up to the Gaspé. If any of you care to decide to drive there, just go up I-87 past Albany on the Northway, past Saratoga Springs, across the border into Montreal, and then you make that turn northeastward past Quebec City, and 4 or 5 hours later, you're up there on the edge of the Gaspé. Lovely place to be. They only speak Francophone French up there, but lovely place, and I'm sure with the cold winds and the flakes flying this weekend, you want to get a preview of winter. there you go. Just jump in the car and head north.
Now you might ask, when I say you, I mean our audience today might be asking, well, how come this is not going to go west toward the United States? Uh, and when we look at the setup here with this, at least going into through yesterday and even into today, you'd say, well, you know what? Perhaps I stopped the map at 2 o'clock this afternoon, but let's go through all the things that are happening here. So obviously we have our flow, which I'm a firm you're a proponent of, you follow the flow. So these arrows I'm drawing are telling us where our air is coming from. So we're seeing it coming around a deep upper low off the coast of California, and there's basically a southwest to west flow across the United States north of 35 degrees north. If you want cool air, you go up into Canada and Labrador and over Newfoundland because there's an upper low east of Newfoundland. Meanwhile, while all that's going on, we have a very narrow upper ridge that extends from the Atlantic and then gets a little stronger back through Texas. Fiona is down here. I'll put a little F there for Fiona. And Fiona is under the ridge, and you would think, okay, well, it's under the ridge, and it should be basically tracking onto the west for quite some time. Well, that would only assume that everything you see on here doesn't change, and obviously it does. Now, what's happening is that the Atlantic part of the ridge is weakening, and if you look up in the northeast, and now we're into Monday night, Tuesday, there's a trough that forms east of the Great Lakes and moves off the New England coast. It starts to strengthen. That creates a weakness. Now we've got a solid weakness. Upper high is way out in the eastern Atlantic, south of the Azores, with an extension to the east side of Fiona. You've got another big upper high that is sitting in Texas. That's probably going to bring 90-degree weather to to a large area of the south and maybe even in the southeast this coming week. But right through here, where I'm going to draw this line, that is the trough that's off the east coast on Tuesday. That creates a weakness that pulls Fiona up northward, but it's not strong enough to take it and kick it out to the northeast. It actually bypasses Fiona. Fiona has to wait for the second stronger trough, and you see it here coming into the Pacific Northwest tonight. It's actually dropping down from Alaska, Joe, goes into the Pacific Northwest, and then swings eastward, and as it approaches eastern Canada, begins to strengthen, and it comes down, picks the whole thing up, and pulls it up to the northeast, and basically absorbs it into the cyclone, that the cold cyclone that's in eastern Canada basically absorbs Fiona as it moves through near Newfoundland. It comes up and around. You can see it disappear. There's that, the big, those dark blue circle there, the height lines off the North Carolina coast, the trough swinging off New England. And as you pointed out, look where our air is coming from Friday afternoon. I mean, it's coming straight down from northern Canada now. It's not coming from the west. And those westerly winds get all the way down into the southeastern part. Those northwesterly winds get all the way down into the southeastern part of the United States. So I was really, I mentioned this last night because I did a quick liver last night. I was pretty impressed by the depth of this upper trough in the eastern part of the United States.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It is a very, very anomalous pattern but you know what? It should be anomalous even for January or February. I mean, how sharp that trough is and where all that cold air is coming down from and into our area. So this is a very unusual situation. And let me just also say, if it weren't for that trough, things could be a lot different around here. You remember some of those models early on that were even suggesting the track would take Fiona into the Gulf of Mexico or closer to the southeastern coastline of the United States. I mean, Lord, if we didn't have that upper trough, who's to say that the system, and in fact, I even remember a couple of model runs intermediate model runs. I think one is a 6Z and 18Z that had Fiona coming straight up the coast toward
Right.
us.
Well,
So
it was trying the main problem during that stretch with the models was not so much what was going on with Fiona, but what was going on in the northern stream. It hadn't figured out yet that there was going to be a major trough coming into the east. Remember, we had the models making a big cutoff in the Great Lakes and dropping it southward and trying to mimic a southerly flow along the east coast. That is not that's not going to happen. Obviously, I think I definitely think that the big storm that went up into the Bering Sea, which has the remnants of the typhoon, I forgot the name of it now from a couple of weeks or so ago, but the big storm that impacted western Alaska is a piece of that breaks off, drops southeastward. That is the one that set this whole bowling ball going here. And there's a couple of other typhoons out in the Pacific that need to be watched because I think they could also have impact on the pattern going forward. This trough pulls out. Now, interestingly enough, the 0Z run last night, for whatever reason, because the models have been showing two troughs, kind of lost the second trough coming in. The GFS did bring it back to an extent during the middle run last night, which is what we're looking at. The new GFS just started. But the European, on the other hand, on the last night's run, did hold on to the second trough. And here's the Europeans' view of both Fiona and weather that's going to be happening across the U.S. Here's your deep trough running up with Fiona passing northwest of Bermuda, gets absorbed, et cetera, et cetera. First one goes out. Next trough drops in to the east as we get toward the week of beginning Monday, September 26th. So the European didn't lose it. The GFS lost it, then it brought it back. So I think those are at the point where there's still models sort of trying to rectify things here and there and figure out where this is all going to be where this is all going to be going in the coming 2 weeks, but definitely not a summary pattern that is setting up across North America by no means.
And the other thing that we should just touch upon here is the fact that we here in the East have been feeling the effects also of the wildfires, the forest fire activity out in the western U.S. The smoke from those fires have made it all the way east into our area. And
sky hazy today?
I didn't really take a good hard look, but I can tell you that on Thursday when I woke up, it was beautiful, pure blue, rich blue sky. But then over a span of the midday and afternoon, as the first plume of smoke began to infiltrate our area, I noticed that deep blue turned to more of a steely blue. And a lot of my friends, a lot of my astronomy friends who like to go out with their telescopes to look up at the sky, have pointed out that on Thursday night, on Friday night, the transparency of the sky, the ability of being able to see very faint stars was pretty well gone because of the fact that haze, thin as it might be, or that smoke plume, thin as it might be, was just enough to squelch the light of those fainter stars. So, I mean, you really have to look, maybe you have to be a connoisseur of the sky to look. But some of that smoke has made it all the way as far east as our area. And, of course, it gets thicker as you go into the Midwest and over the Plain States, closer into where the fires are actually occurring.
Yeah, Mark G, one of our regulars, messaged me yesterday, pointing out the other on Friday too, pointing out that where he is in Pennsylvania, some very the smoke and the hazy skies and so on. So yeah, definitely having an impact. It might make the sunsets look pretty though.
Yeah, sure. I should make a little bit of a redder or more orangey yellow coloration. Always a very pretty sight to see, but it comes at the expense of lousy air. In fact, one of those astronomy people, posted on one of the chat boards a picture that he took. He was recently on a flight, and it clearly shows blue sky above, and then right down near the horizon, it's like a scuzz layer of brown. And he says, "Yep, that's the smoke that we're looking through." So There you go.
Well, we've got some short range issues to deal with too, and you can see Fiona on the lower right. You could sort of see on the middle left the upper air storm off the coast of California that's coming in with some rain there. We've got a little bit of action off the southeast coast with clouds, but not really anything to speak of. And also from the northern plains to the western lakes and on up into upstate New York and New England, where northern New England, where there's a frontal boundary. That was a backdoor front that the uh, European model at one point earlier this week was actually trying to bring it through for today, and the GFS did not, and so on. In that particular instance, the GFS was indeed correct. So let's just go to the radar and see what's happening. Some showers up in northern Maine, upstate New York with some heavier downpours. You see some showers off the South Carolina coast and off the Georgia and Florida coasts, on both coasts on Florida, but nothing causing any problems. Some light showers in parts of the Dakotas and also down into eastern Nebraska, western Iowa. A couple of heavier downpours in southern Illinois and southeast Missouri. And here's the rain. Nice solid area there. Nice rotation on the radar coming into central and northern California. Rain's not that far from LA, believe it or not, but it's more to the north than anything else. The Storm Prediction Center, I'm going to just jump to well, might as well. All right, we'll look at day one. Sorry. So now, yeah, it's a good thing. They just added an enhanced risk of severe weather from southeastern Iowa into west central Illinois, and that comes with a 10% tornado risk with this next cold front that's coming in. It's not a large area of risk, but it is there. Then for tomorrow, the Storm Prediction Center has a marginal risk in upstate New York, Vermont, western Massachusetts, northwest Connecticut, to just north and west of New York City. Northwest New Jersey is in it. Most of just about all of Pennsylvania except the southeast is not in the marginal risk zone. No tornado risk is being indicated right now. I wonder whether there might be a small area of slight risk for tomorrow. I mean, there's enough of a trough there, and it's kind of in a strengthening mode rather than in a weakening mode. So maybe they might add a small area of slight risk when we look at this forecast tomorrow.
Well, right at the moment, the only thing that they have in terms of the day two convective outlook would be 5% chance for straight line damaging winds and a 5% chance of hail. They do not have any threat of a tornado, although I often scratch my head because I think that, Joe, most any severe weather threat carries with it even a very small chance of a tornado.
Well, just a note, it says less than 2%. So it doesn't say zero. It says less than 2%. They just don't. Yeah. They just don't outline it.
But I think that the reason why they don't think that there would be more than or while there's a less than 2% chance of a tornado, that's probably the main reason why they don't have, at least on today's day two outlook, a slight chance. They may very well come up with a different idea tomorrow and may put in a very small area of slight, which would probably be somewhere over central New York, which would include Elmira and Utica and those areas, if that was the case. And we always know that historically, they are always, as you get closer to the actual day in question, that they tend to accentuate. They tend to outline a greater area of possible severe weather. So again, it may very well be, if not tomorrow morning, then maybe by midday or early afternoon tomorrow, they may have a slight risk. So yeah, I would say there's that certainly that possibility.
Yeah, we only have, by the way, 12. The GFS is only out to 12 hours. So in another 6 weeks, we won't have that problem anymore. We'll have it for the show, but right now we're going off the 6Z run, and obviously no issues today over a good portion of the country, except for that area in California and in parts of northern New England. There are some showers that are going to be moving into Vermont and into Maine, and some thunderstorms later today into tonight because of the weak frontal boundary that's up there. You can see showers and storms back into Missouri and into Illinois. Now tomorrow, here comes the cold front, with maybe some showers and storms. I put them in the forecast, some scattered showers and thunderstorms late in the afternoon and evening. Uh, Joe, I'm thinking maybe tomorrow, middle to upper 80s, depending on how much sun we get. That's the tough part of the forecast this time of year. The long nights, you get these low clouds and fog. So on a day like tomorrow, you got to wait for them to burn off, and then that sort of cuts down the daytime heating a little bit. So it gets a little difficult. This might be a case if this were July or early part of August. The setup for tomorrow would probably take us up into the lower or middle 90s, but we might have a little bit of trouble tomorrow, depending on with temperatures, depending on clouds. Then you notice Tuesday, Fiona's moving through the eastern Bahamas. We're going to get a little bit of dew point relief on Tuesday and a little bit of temperature relief, only to see things warm up again quite a bit on Wednesday. Wednesday may turn out to be the hottest day of the week. I also went middle to upper 80s. And then here comes the next cold front here for into the northeast on Wednesday night with some both the European, Joe, this is unusual, both the European and the GFS are in lockstep here. They both have this front coming through Wednesday night with some showers and thunderstorms and offshore Thursday morning. And then in comes the cool air. And you want to ask yourself how cool. Well, it's not often that you see thicknesses, Joe. The 540 thickness is right at New York City by 2 a.m., actually by 7 a.m. Friday morning. And there's your northerly flow, by the way, that you're talking about. I mean, that's pretty impressive. It's gonna really feel like autumn here in the Northeast, and not only in the Northeast, but all the way down through the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast, with the flow around this big high that is coming for this time of year, a 1027, 28 high. That's a big high.
Well, the normal here in the Hudson Valley, well, the normal, let's say, for White Plains, normal high temperature, mid-afternoon temperature, is somewhere between 70 and 75 degrees. That's the normal for this time of the year. Tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, temperatures are going to be more like 75 to 80, maybe even again into the lower 80. I'm talking about again for the lower Hudson Valley. So well above normal over the first 3 days of this week. I'm looking at the GFX, the long range temperatures for the end of the week. For the end of the week, Joe, they have a high temperature in White Plains of 62, a full 10 degrees below normal on Friday. And here, the first half of the week, we have temperatures that are well above normal, at or around 80 or even in the low 80s. Well, and then all of a sudden it drops off like a cliff, so that by Friday it's down in the low 60s. Maybe for some parts of the lower Hudson Valley, like maybe Newburgh, for example, may not even get out of the 50s on Friday.
Listen, I think that you're onto something here with the temperatures, because I'm look at these anomalies here. I got the anomaly loop. It's not just even in the Northeast, by the way. It goes back to the Great Lakes and Northern Plains. This is Thursday afternoon. Much of the country by Thursday is below normal in terms of temperatures. The only place that's above normal is the Deep South, okay, because they got to wait for the cold front to come through, and then after that, even the Deep South, except right along the Gulf Coast, we see I'm going to be in those darker blue below normal temperatures, Joe. I mean, look at these anomalies up in northern New England, northeastern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and into Maine. We're talking about temperatures running between 15 and 20 degrees below average, and that goes all the way back into the upper Mississippi Valley and northern plains. Saturday, still chilly. Next Sunday, you start to see some moderation, but then there's another cold front that's coming down with another round of below normal temperatures for the week that follows. Although not quite. Yesterday, the models would make the argument that the second trough was actually as deep, if not deeper, than the first. Then overnight, they kind of backed away. So I want to see where they take it today and tonight. But that second trough could be almost as cold as the first one, depending on how things set up.
And let's point out also, Joe, that people are looking at this and they say, so, well, there's got to be a lot of cloud cover or not much in the way of sunshine. Well, if things work out with that big high coming down from Canada, we're talking about temperatures in the low 60s and high 50s under brilliantly clear sunny skies on Friday. So no, it's not going to be one of those situations where it's going to be, oh my goodness, it's going to be overcast or more clouds and sun or whatever like that. No, it's going to be bright and sunny, but ineffective sunshine because of the origin of where the air is coming from for the end of the week.
I'm looking here at so this is, let's see. So Friday morning, these are the GFS, at 12Z, where it's got a 46 print over New York City and 44 over Albany and 50 by me at 18Z. So it's not quite the high temperature of the day. I don't know if that's a 5 or a 6. Let me get a little closer. Let me get the close-up map on the temperatures here. Yeah, that's a 58 on the GFS at 18Z on Friday afternoon. And a lot of places not getting out of the 50s. I will just say that if you're listening to forecasts, folks, you're going to hear forecasts today that probably, if they start talking about Friday, they'll probably be talking about temperatures well up into the 60s or even lower 70s. Too high. Too high.
No. And but let's also talk about the wind, which probably, I would guess, ahead of the front and then especially behind the front, sustained at around 20. I could see on Friday winds sustained at near 20 miles per hour with gusts, Joe, to maybe 30 or 35. There's actually going to be a wind chill on Friday. I mean, if you get to 60 degrees or thereabouts, you factor in the wind, it's going to probably feel more like the 40s to around 50 Friday afternoon. So, I tell you, autumn officially arrives at the end of the week, and it's going to feel every bit like autumn weather here by the end of this week.
And by the way, I'm looking at I pulled up the 500 for Thursday night. There's a good, solid-looking shortwave that comes through Thursday evening. So I got to wonder, because we're talking about maybe some showers and thunderstorms late on Monday. So I guess with that upper trough, the second upper trough, the second front produces some showers and storms. You got to wonder whether there might be some severe weather risk Wednesday evening when that upper trough swings through Thursday night. That brings down the the coldest of this cold air. Thursday won't be too cold. Thursday actually will probably still be in the 70s, but then you're going to see it after the upper trough swings through Thursday night. That's when you're going to get the real push of cold air for Friday and for Saturday. So pretty interesting week ahead coming up. Let me, before we come back full screen and wrap the show up, I just want to take a look on the recon here. 988 is the last pressure reading. So there hasn't been another fix, just the same 3 fixes that we saw from earlier. Thought maybe they might have some additional obs, but they do not. So do you have Briller Jeopardy today, or do I?
Yes, I have them. I have it here.
All right, so let's get that going. By the way, before the show, I made like a bunch of, I don't know, how do you describe it? I made pizza dough. I've been making pizza dough for the last week to get rid of some flour that I've had. So it's in the oven now, rising. Not cooking, rising with the yeast.
November, we're having our honeymooners tribute up here in Putnam Valley, and one of the things we've been advertising is no-cal pizza.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to figure out now how do you make pizza that's no-cal?
It's basically celery.
Yeah.
That's it.
You get an itsy bitsy piece or a teeny weeny piece.
Correct.
All right. So finally, after 2 weeks today, the final retired tropical name on Briller Jeopardy. Then Briller Jeopardy will hit the road this week in Wildwood, Ocean City, and Long Beach Island. Subbing for me, JQ. Just kidding. No. Here goes the today's list. Since 1954, How many years were there no retired names, and you need to go within 7 for a gift from you know where?
You mean how many years without having a name being retired in that particular year?
Right.
Oh God. Um. All right. While I'm thinking about the answer to that question, let me acknowledge Leon Probitsky hitting a super chat and saying that he cannot wait to smell the Canadian pines. Oh, you're going to smell them this late this week for sure. And Brandon Doherty, haven't seen you on the board, Brandon, in a while. It's going well. Thank you. Also hitting super chat. So thank you, both of you, for doing that today. Okay, so I'm going to. How many years that there hasn't. I do recall, not a whole lot through the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Right.
So I'm going to say 2, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 2000, 2010, 20.
It seems like me like almost every year
Yeah.
nowadays we have a retired name. But
Right. I'll say 25.
well, the number you had to be within 7. You are within 7, but it's 19.
19.
19.
Yeah, I mean, we had, I believe it was 2005 that 5 names were retired, which was the most in any season. Oh, that's not too bad. I wasn't too far off.
Okay.
I was gonna
So the
say
next.
I was gonna say 20, and then I said, well, let me nudge it up and say 25.
The
Go ahead.
first year of retired storms was in 1954, and in fact, in that year there were 3 retired storms, and the letters kicking off each name, the letters were C, E, and H. Can you name those 3 retired names?
Carol, Edna, Hazel.
Now, did you cheat, Joe?
No. I knew
I
that.
was even going to give you a hint.
You didn't
I was
have
going to
to.
say, Mr. B,
Yeah,
Mr.
no.
B.
Yeah, no. Carol,
No.
Edna, and Hazel. Carol and Edna came up the East Coast, and Hazel went into South Carolina coast. And I think the New York City highest wind gust record still holds from Hazel. It's like 104 miles an hour. That was measured at Battery Park.
Hazel did a number on Toronto.
Yes.
Believe it or not, that was that storm. They still remember that one. Since the list of retired names began in 1954, what is the most consecutive years that there were no retired names?
The most consecutive years with no retired names. I'll say 5.
Well, not too bad. 3. 1958 and 59, there were no retired names. 1986, 87, no retired names. And 93 and 94, no retired names. So
Okay.
there you go.
All right.
Now here's the bonus question. What tropical system lasted the most days in the Atlantic Basin?
Oh, wasn't that was it Kyle?
I would have said Kyle,
But
and I remember.
But yeah, I remember you're gonna bring up that advisory that they wrote that one time.
Yeah, but that was not. Apparently, he's looking only for one particular name.
Okay, because
one particular
the
storm.
only one I know that before Kyle there was in the late 60s was Hurricane Faith, which was around for a long time and had also like an incredibly long track. It started off the African coast and they were still tracking it when it got up into the Arctic. But
Yep, I remember Faith very well because it came very close to hitting Puerto Rico, and I was just a young tot.
yes.
My mother brought my sister and I to Puerto Rico for a vacation, and as soon as we landed, oh, we're watching Hurricane Fate, but Fate missed us, thank God. No, the name or the storm that has lasted the longest, 27 days, was no, not Marianne,
Hello.
not Marianne.
Not Marianne.
It was,
I'm not getting that.
well, on Gilligan's Island.
Oh,
If it wasn't
Gilligan's
there
Island. Okay, right, got you. Oh, Ginger.
yes.
Ginger was got the one probably one of the oddest tracks if you look up Hurricane Ginger, um, because it moved. It was off the North Carolina coast. It went straight east to almost a 40. Well, it got pretty far out there. I don't want to say I don't know if it was 40 west, but it got certainly out to about 50 west. And then it turned around and it came back all the way westward to make a landfall into the North Carolina coast. It's probably one of the oddest tracks that you will ever see, particularly at that latitude, because usually when they're up at 35 degrees north, they're going someplace. They're not, they're taking off to the northeast. They're running up the coast. They're going toward Nova Scotia or Newfoundland. They seldom go out, stall, and then turn around and come back.
Well, it was 27 days, by far and away the longest lasting tropical system. And I might point out also, from the cast of Gilligan's Island, the only one that's still alive and kicking is Ginger, Tina Louise. So
I used to see her from time to time when I worked at Channel 11. She lived in the east side of Manhattan, so she was working on Broadway. So sometimes on my dinner break, I would be heading out to go get something to eat, and I would pass her on the street. We never talked or I never said hello or anything like that. But it was her, and several times.
She must be in her 80s now. I know Dawn Wells was in her 80s when she passed away. So
yeah, no. These days, the way I feel, Joe, everybody's in their 80s.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up. At this point, I'm gonna go finish my pizza. By the way, real quick, I had I think it's the same bear. So Thursday night, I had a bear, and so I saw that my garbage pail was turned upside down when I went out on my porch. So I said, "Oh Jesus, I gotta clean up the garbage." Well, there was no garbage. The bear took the whole bag with him into the woods. Okay.
And he didn't charge you for that.
No, and you know what? I hope he had friends there because there were at least three unfinished cigars in that garbage. So, and then this morning when I got up at 6:30, I heard a thump, and I think the bear must have heard me when I turned the lights on because it gets dark here till after 7 o'clock now. In the morning. So when I turned the lights on, it probably scared him away. So it looked like he was about to take the second bag because it was completely out of the garbage, and he had opened it up and taken a few things and left a little bit of a mess, but not much. But yeah, this time around, he didn't take the trash with him.
Well, by the way, Joe, speaking of cigars, the Mets are still in first place, and as I said, if we manage to win the World Series this year, here we go.
Did you put it in a Ziploc bag with a wet sponge at least, please? You're gonna die. It's gonna kill you if you smoke that cigar.
A Don Leo.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll leave it on that. You can take care of that dusty mess when the time comes, if the time comes. In the meantime, everybody have a great rest of your Sunday because you got a long way to go yet. It's only noontime. We'll be back tomorrow night at 7:30 Eastern Time. Those of you who are on my weather platform on Patreon, patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Chaffee, I'll be putting up some updates on Fiona as we go through the afternoon after I get myself a little bit of lunch. And we'll see you tomorrow, 7:30 right here.
We'll be here.
Bye.